Welcome to Two Humans Talking, the podcast that talks about what it takes to stay healthy and be healthy in a modern, fast paced world. I'm your host, Tiffany Simms, and today I am here with Elizabeth Sherman. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Just our little bit of time behind the scenes of chit chatting, I'm like, oh, this is going to be such a good conversation. And so, as we get started, share with us who you are, where you live, like what makes you uniquely sparkle in this world.
What makes me sparkle? Good question. So, I'm Elizabeth Sherman. First of all, thank you for having me on the show. I'm really super excited about our conversation today as well. So, it's going to be lots of fun. So I am a master certified life and health coach. And to answer your question, I live in Mexico on a beach.
Fun.
Yeah. So I left the whole rat race in the United States and moved down to Mexico about 8 years ago. And it's been tons of fun and fascinating. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have questions.
Yes.
So, from living in the States to moving abroad to a country like Mexico, which,
Mm-hmm.
if you're raised in the US,
Yeah.
poverty everywhere, like, don't let them cross the border, like, just death and destruction and crime and just like, what is that? Shoe dog millionaire style, right? What is the reality of going from the US to Mexico? What is it really like living outside of the country?
Yeah. It's probably one of the hardest things I've actually, no, it's probably the hardest thing I have ever done. The first year that we lived here was just so much learning, not only in terms of the language, because neither my husband nor I are fluent in Spanish, but also the way that things are done. So culturally, it's a very different place. And then also just like the day to day things, like, I remember feeling like I was mapping everything. I was like, okay, hablar, that's to speak. And, you know, uh, vaso is glass. And so like mapping everything and then also doing that with miles and kilometers and like everything just took translation. And so that being said, when my husband and I lived in the United States, we don't have children. And so I think that it was really difficult for us to have a social circle. Typically, people will have kids, and then their kids' parents will be their friends.
Built-in friends.
Exactly, exactly. And we didn't have that because we didn't have kids. And so when we moved down here, our social circle has been so much more robust. Here, people just have more time. Whereas I felt like in the United States, it was always really difficult to connect with people because everyone was just scattered in a million different places. And so, yeah, there's no perfect place. That's something that I always say. There are good parts and bad parts to every place that you want to live. And it's just a matter of what is it that you're willing to sacrifice, right, in order to have the life that you want.
I love
Um,
that. And I
yeah.
love that you share that perspective. So I live in the country of like, so I live in Maryland. I'm about 60 miles outside of DC, but I live in the farmlands of Maryland. And so many people, when I was born and raised here, I've lived in like a 60-mile radius my whole life. And everyone growing up was just always like, my hair keeps falling in my face. It's driving me nuts. Everyone's like, I can't wait to get out of here. I can't wait to get out of here. And the more I traveled, the more I realized like everywhere is the same. Like when you visit a place, it's new and exciting. Do you know how many people come to DC to see monuments and museums and how unfrequently, how little I go to DC to do those things because like why? I've done it a million times. It's there. So I feel like no matter where you go, like your everyday is your normal. And
Right.
other people visiting your town is like, this is so cool. Like I live
Right.
in a water town and there's like Airbnbs and hotels. And I've always been like, why do we have these? Are those for like family members to stay when they come for holidays and stuff? No, people vacation here. And you're like, why, right? But it's because you make where you live your home. And sometimes you
Yeah.
just get in the motions. And so I love
Yeah.
hearing that outside perspective, especially when so many people are like, I'm going to run away to a foreign land. I'm tired of my life. I'm running away.
Yeah. Well, funny story about you saying that people are the same everywhere is one of my big motivators to learn Spanish was because I wanted to eavesdrop on other people. And what I found out was that they're saying the same bullshit that we're saying. It's just a different language.
Yes. Right? Same stuff. And so you really do have to make where you live your home and like
Yeah.
figure out what activities you enjoy doing and finding a place where you can live and do those things regularly.
Right. Right. Yeah. And what's really interesting is that the more that I travel, the more that I realize that the world, yeah, we are just two humans. We are really just people who are trying to connect, who are trying to feel belonging. And like universally, we are all the same. And that the more you travel, the more you realize, well, both sides of that, that one, yes, belonging in community, but then the other piece is that we are so insignificant. And so
Mhm.
like it, not that it doesn't matter, but like all of our decisions don't really matter, right?
Yeah, you said that, and it reminded me of the time that I flew from Rome back to the US.
Uh-huh.
And I happened to be on a flight with someone I went to high school with, and
Oh,
whose dad I ended up working with as an adult. I didn't know they were related, never put those pieces together. And here I am on this plane, and I was like, what? In like that reality of like, we live on this big universe. There are so many people, and yet the world is so small. And like that, you end up on a flight back from Rome to the US on a
uh-huh.
random Tuesday with someone you actually know in the midst of like all of the people. And it's
Yeah.
like the world is cool. Nothing actually really matters except for the present moment.
Yeah.
And like connection is important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you see the people around you?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
so cool. I love that
and
perspective.
in addition to that, that we are not alone in our experience, right? That for everyone who's listening right now, that whatever it is that you're afraid to talk about or don't want to talk about, like there are other people who are going through that exact same thing. One of the things that I work with my clients on is perimenopause, menopause. And so, like, no one wants to talk about that stuff, right? But the more we talk about, the more we normalize it, and the more that there are then solutions for us around.
Yeah. I love that. So I just turned 40 in August, and I feel like you said no one wants to talk about it. I feel that is very true of like the 8 to 15 years ahead of me people. But like
Mm-hmm.
my peer group, everyone's like, is this perimenopause? Is this a symptom? Are my hormones out of whack? Like, has this been happening to you? What's happening to my period? Things seem more viscous. Is that normal? Like I feel like my age group is so much more open to the conversation. And so I've
100%.
been pondering, is it because I'm now in the age group of people that are starting to talk about it? So now it's awareness. I'm like aware of those conversations, or were they really not happening before?
No, I think that they just weren't happening before. And that within the past couple of years, we've really seen a research, or I shouldn't say a resurgence, a surgence of women talking about aging, talking about menopause, talking about like what happens with our bodies as we get older. And being unwilling to not talk about it as to offend someone who doesn't want to hear about periods, right? And so I think that it's just happening more and more. In addition to that, one of like when I started working with my clients, I would ask them the question of, to your point of, is this perimenopause? Is this normal or is it not normal? I used to have my clients talk to their mothers or aunts or older sisters about their symptoms and ask them. But the thing is that women's um, women's bodies were intentionally excluded from medical research until the 1950s because our hormones were considered to be too complicated. And so when you think about medical research, what happens is we don't have any money going into that because men who are in charge of the purse strings aren't interested in it. And so it's only been recently that we're getting more funding around menopause and perimenopause and how our bodies work. So there's definitely been a lot more information about it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so cool, right?
Mhm.
Do you know that you probably do know this, but it was news to me. I heard about like maybe it was like 14 months ago. Someone had mentioned to me that we are only now testing period products with actual menstrual blood.
I did not know that, but it tracks.
And all of a sudden, I was like, so I wasn't crazy for always leaking around a tampon and pulling it out and it being dry, but yet my underwear looked like I didn't know how to take care of myself.
Yes.
Right? Like it's like, oh my God, I wasn't nuts. I wasn't
Yeah.
crazy. I wasn't weird. Like they were never actually designed to absorb. And once they started doing the testing, they realized that menstrual blood has a different viscosity and a different absorbency, and that the materials that they had been, the way they had been manufacturing cotton for period products here in the last like 25, 30 years weren't
Yeah.
actually absorbing menstrual blood, but they would absorb like nosebleeds because the blood is different.
Makes total sense.
And you're just
Why
like,
ask a woman? Like,
but it's like things that you would have never, like things that you just unconsciously assume
right.
based off of the box.
I don't know that I've ever thought
So,
about how they tested period products.
right, I just assumed that it was
Right.
right and that it was
Isn't it
designed
just
for
a little
me.
blue liquid that they pour on? Like,
Right, every pad commercial from the 90s just pouring liquid and showing you
like
absorbing it up.
blue water.
Yeah, not period blood, by the way.
That
But I,
absolutely.
you know what? For which I'm glad this came up because I think that we need like we legit need to talk about those things because
Yeah.
I know you had mentioned like if you're experiencing, if you're thinking it, you're probably not crazy. You're probably not the only one. And so like after I heard that, all of a sudden I was like, so I cannot be the only person who is like leaking around a tampon and
Right.
thinking that there's something weird with them.
Right. But as a teenage girl, you're like, I can't tell anyone about this. Right.
No,
Maybe your
everyone else is
mom.
using them in the bathroom. Obviously, it's working for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So crazy. You said something
Yeah.
before we hit record that
Mm.
I want to unpack. So
Okay.
Elizabeth said that you can half-ass your life and go like big places. So I want to I want you to talk about that for a minute.
Well, the idea is that we've all been raised. Okay, so I was talking to a friend of mine who's a parent coach, and she said something that really kind of opened my eyes to this whole approach, which is that as parents, which I'm not a parent, but I have parents, and so as a parent, our children don't have the mental capacity that we have. They don't have the rational thinking that we have, but we expect them to. We don't, we talk to our children like we would talk to ourselves or an adult. And even like little kids, we think that they have more capability than they actually have. And why this story is important is because that is how we get imprinted with how to talk to ourselves. And so as we grow up, as we are adults, we think that we should be ahead of where we actually are, right? And that's what perpetuates this all or nothing approach, this perfectionism that we have. I've always been curious, like, why do all of us believe this, that we should be perfect, right? And so, first of all, I started my career as a personal trainer and nutritionist. And I was one of those judgy people who would be like, all you have to do is, because again, I
You
don't have
just don't
kids.
want it bad enough.
Exactly.
You're
Like,
being a lazy F.
I never said that, but I was probably thinking it for
You
sure.
know damn well you were.
Yeah. Like, why can't you do this? Like, if you are not, and so again, I was a 30-something-year-old woman, no kids, married, but I had all of the time in the world in order to prep my food and exercise and do all of the things that you need to do in order to quote unquote be healthy. And I had these clients who were women in midlife, and they wouldn't be getting the results that I thought they should be getting, that the research papers told me that they should be getting. And so what happened is I was like, well, all of these people couldn't possibly be wrong, and it worked for me, so it must work for you, right? Not realizing that women in midlife have a completely different set of circumstances that preclude them from doing everything perfectly. And so, as I started being more compassionate with myself, I
Mm.
started being more compassionate with my clients. And I do not think that we have to do everything perfectly in order to get benefit from it. We can half ass our health and still get better results than if we're going all in and then stopping because it's too hard. So why not try half-assing it and see if you can actually get to your result by half-assing it? It'll certainly get you a lot further than going all in and then getting frustrated and giving up and then feeling all defeated for trying again.
I love that. Yes. I've always so my career, this side of my career, it started with me helping lifelong dieters heal their relationship with food and exercise. So I
Yeah.
very much understand that. And for a really long, this hair is driving me nuts. Will not stay. Keeps poking me right in the eyeball. And so for a really long time, I had a binge eating disorder and I had gone to doctors, I had been on all the medications, and it was just like, here's another meal plan, here's the exercise program. You don't trying enough, you're lying to yourself. And when you're done lying to yourself, you can stop being fat and stop
Mm,
overeating and losing control, because losing control over food isn't actually a thing. I know we told you you're a binge eater, but that's to make you feel better, to make you think there's actually something wrong with you when it's really a control issue and you just don't want to. And I realized one day, like, it was getting unhealthier and unhealthier. And I was like, you know what? They're not helping me. The experts aren't helping me. I got to do something. And so all of a sudden, I put my blinders on. I became a personal trainer. I studied nutrition, like never to use them with other people. But I
right.
was like, I need
Same.
to understand this so that I can save myself and figure out what it is that I'm missing. Because like I don't think I'm broken and I just don't get it. Like I'm doing everything that they're telling me. And so like you fast forward and I figured it out. I was so committed to the plan and the program. All of a sudden it was magical. And I was the best day of my life. And I was helping other people. And I was like, why can't my clients figure out, because I had developed those over time? Who knew? I was like, why can't my clients keep the results? Why don't they want it bad enough? I became the voices that other people were saying to me.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden, I had another one of those life moments where I felt like I kept hitting a glass ceiling. Like I would be really good on something, I'd be going after a goal, and I would like hit something and I'd sabotage myself. And I
Yeah.
couldn't get myself over the hump. And I was like, all right, I could either hire a certified coach or I could go teach myself the process of high performance coaching so I can help myself through this every time it's going to happen, because I think this is life. I think I'm always going to have like something in the way. I just need to figure it out. And I was sitting in that high performance coaching program, and all of a sudden, I was like, oh my God, the reason none of my clients could keep their results was because I never actually helped them reset their autopilot. So their habits, when shit's hitting the fan and their brains going into like autopilot mode, match that of the person they wanted to be, rather than them relying on the coping mechanisms they had developed in those really shitty parts of their life to survive. Right. And so it was like that, like, oh, what if we kind of like you say, like that half ass? What if we stopped trying to be militantly compliant and started thinking like, could I add a veggie to this?
Right.
Could I move my body today in a way that made me feel happy? Doesn't have to be a
Right.
workout at the gym. Like I could go dancing, I could walk a lap, like it didn't matter. And like all of a sudden, my clients started keeping the results that they would get because it wasn't a this or that. I'm really healthy or my life's in shambles. It was like, oh, I can ask myself that question. Can I add a vegetable to this? No guilt, no shame. Could I move my body today? Yeah, I could park a little bit further. Maybe I go for a walk at lunch. And like those little things over time are so much more valuable than that, like I was militantly compliant and miserable for 3 days. And now I'm gonna live for a second because I messed it up and I'll wait till Monday.
Right. Yes. Like we all know the statistic that says that 97% of people will regain weight lost once they hit like their goal weight within 5 years, right? I think it's because we don't allow ourselves to have treats on the way to our goal. And so, like, yeah, like you said, we have to be militant until we get to this goal. And then what happens is we get to the goal and we know intellectually we should be able to have ice cream or pizza or french fries or whatever it is. But because we haven't practiced on our way to our goal, once we get there, we eat the ice cream, but then we are flooded with guilt because we don't know how much is enough. We don't know how much is too much. We can't ride that cusp of okay, this is going to keep me sane because food is pleasure, right? And so we of course go to food. And how much ice cream can I have in my diet or guacamole? I live in Mexico. I have guacamole every single week.
As you should, it's so good for your body.
It is, and it's delicious.
It's so good for your brain.
Yeah. And so being able to eat that on your way to your goal, will you reach your goal faster if you're doing the all or nothing approach? Maybe, but maybe not because you're going to be more quote unquote compliant if you're adding treats into your diet on the way
Yeah.
there, right?
I believe it's not, those are, if you're being militantly compliant, they're not your results to keep because how
Yeah.
you lose weight, it's how you maintain your weight loss. And
Yeah.
also the fact that somehow guacamole, avocados have been demonized as high calorie fat food and that you have to be careful for it is just like breaks my brain. It's almost like that time I used to think that if I added cheese to my broccoli, that suddenly the broccoli had no nutritional value.
Right. Yeah. It kills me when people are like, yeah, I don't eat vegetables because the way that I like them is with sauce and cheese. I'm like, then freaking eat the sauce and cheese.
Like, isn't that, like it just makes my brain hurt that that is a very common conversation and a very common thought process of I if I add cheese, all of a sudden my broccoli had no nutrition and I shouldn't have eaten it. What was the
Mhm.
point of eating it? I should have eaten the cupcake.
Right.
Like
Brains are funny.
avocados all of a sudden are fat people food. Like they're gonna make
Right.
you fat. And it's
Mhm.
like, when did we demonize food? Why, but
Oh,
yet
this
we
has
haven't
been years.
demonized, but yet we haven't demonized the Doritos. I love their Doritos has a Cool Ranch dill pickle mix. Delicious. Love Doritos. But we haven't demonized that. We haven't demonized Hostess cupcakes. We haven't demonized all the shit in the middle, all the stuff in the middle of the store. But yet, fruits, they're too high in sugar.
Hmm.
But yet we're not talking about the Starburst pack you just ate. Like I just what how did that happen?
Yes. Yes.
And what if people actually asked, how do I want to feel today? And how do I want to feel later? Because when you said the like ice cream and I don't know when's enough, my brain went to, and because I wasn't paying attention throughout the whole thing of how I felt, now I'm probably bloated because I didn't learn that maybe ice cream wasn't good for me, like a good choice for me because of how it made my body feel.
Yeah. 100%. We are not taught to pay attention to our bodies, to listen to our bodies. In fact, diet culture teaches us to actively disassociate from our bodies because diet culture teaches us, oh, eat these 1,200 calories. And if you're hungry, you're not hungry, just drink some water, right?
And
Like,
if you're hungry, you're winning.
Yes. Yes.
Like it's a badge of honor to be hungry because that means you're losing weight.
Right.
And it's like, actually, those
No.
are our bodies are so smart. And
Yeah.
that's your body telling you that it needs something.
Hmm.
Not
Yeah.
anything. There's usually a something that it's asking for, a specific need.
Right.
But like you said, we're not taught to listen to it.
No.
You fall
I
down, it
remember
doesn't
I was
hurt.
at a party and I was talking to another friend of mine. I was probably eating brownies at the time. And I was saying about how, I just couldn't stop eating them. And I don't know, I forget what my friend was saying, but then a third friend was in the kitchen and she was like, huh, I just listened to my body. And she walked out of the kitchen and I was like, and bitch. Like, I don't even know what that means. Like,
My body says I need 10 more.
exactly.
That's a really common conversation with women. It's like, actually, when I listen to my body, that's how I got fat.
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, the reason that like your body was actually under the control of the cravings and the additives and all of the things that were triggering you to be hungry. And
Hmm.
once you like learn the difference, your body doesn't crave them the way they used to. Or when the craving hits, all of a sudden you're like, and you pause and you're like, oh, I had that cookie earlier. I really do actually just need some water and some vegetables because I know I need to flush that out. Not because I'm wrong for being hungry, but it's like, oh yeah, we
Right.
just need to like move it through.
Right. Or I've just gotten off of a really stressful phone call, or I didn't sleep well last night and now I'm craving carby foods because I didn't sleep well and my body's not creating energy properly.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so funny. Like once you learn that carbs are energy, it's like,
Hmm.
oh, that's why my body craves them when I'm tired. I didn't get much sleep when it's the end of the afternoon and I've been going hard and I didn't eat. It's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, it's asking. We just replaced it with like Snickers and sodas when in reality I could have just had a whole meal and been fine.
Right.
Elizabeth, I have a question for you. So I'm really into like I'm a very intuitive eater. I'm very much listen in the stage of my life where like I'm listening to my body and responding and adjusting.
Yeah.
As I'm entering these like perimenopausal years,
Hmm.
what are some things that maybe I should start being aware of that I haven't maybe experienced before that are
Yeah.
gonna be happening that may not, my answers before may not be the right answers now? Like, what kind of things should I be looking for, and how do I help listen to my body?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, I find that midlife is this beautiful time where our bad habits kind of catch up with us.
Mm,
And I think, going back to diet culture, that many women have been socialized to eat like a 13-year-old boy and have the bodies of Victoria's Secret models. Like
mm,
that's what our goal is. So that many of us believe that if I eat cake, I'm just going to go for an extra run, right? But the calories in versus calories out model doesn't work anymore. And what we have to do is we have to get really careful about the quality of our food and paying attention to how we exercise. So, exercise cannot be a way to burn calories anymore as you move into midlife. It has to be a place where you use it to manage your stress. And I
mm,
remember the first time I thought about that or learned it, my brain just exploded. I was like, well, if exercise is not calories out, I don't understand. But so I needed to say that first. But that being said, I think there are 5 different biomarkers that I use with my clients. And when I talk about biomarkers, I'm talking about just symptoms, I guess. So our cravings, our appetite, our energy levels, our sleep quality, and then our mood. Okay, so those are 5 different things that when we have low cravings, low appetite, high energy, good sleep quality, and good mood, then we are eating those foods and exercising and taking self-care that are appropriate for our bodies. Um, so those are the first things that I'm going to offer that you want to look out for. But the other things are I've been able to, with myself and with many of my clients, manage joint pain, manage night sweats and hot flashes. Um, Now, since you have an eating disorder, it's really important, and this goes for everyone else who's listening right now, that the reasons that we make decisions about what we eat is going to be important in this situation. So many people who have former eating disorders, when I tell them that you might want to pay attention to your flour and your sugar, they hear restriction. And
Mm.
I think that it's a really different experience when I decide to eat foods like pizza or burgers, because I don't want to suffer the consequence of having the hot flash later. And so I find that with flour and sugar, you won't necessarily see a direct relationship between I eat the bread and I get the hot flash, but it's more of an overall threshold in your body. So I found that I could have like 2 or 3 servings of bread per week, and that didn't give me hot flashes. Of course, this is my body. Everyone's body is completely different. And I could have 2 or 3 servings and it would be totally fine. If I went into that fourth, I'd start to get the hot flash. And so I just have to back off. So it's really just going to be about experimenting with your foods and cheese. Uh, yeah, let's see, cheese, flour, sugar, alcohol. Those are going to be the big ones that are going to impact how your body feels.
All the things that don't my body doesn't really tells me they don't like now. So
Great.
evidently
Yeah.
I'm gonna be great. Great to go, good to go.
Yeah.
It really is magical. If you're listening and you're like, that sounds nice. Okay. You want to take everything. You're the lady, the woman who like loves her glass of wine at the end of the day. Elizabeth and I aren't saying don't have them. We're not saying you can't and they're no longer for you and you just need to like be no fun and whatever. But what we are saying is like, what would happen if you started paying attention to how you actually felt, how your body responded, what your sleep is like, how well your digestion is, if you get bloated, get indigestion, headaches, crankiness, or if you're full of energy, right? Like starting to pay attention and almost be like the own scientist of your own life and your own body. And so, and like start testing and figuring out like what really does work for you because it's not about here's the list of things to eat and not to eat. It's what does my body work? What works for me in this season right now? And so, what I hear you sharing with me, Elizabeth, is as long as I keep that mentality of like recognizing something not feeling right and like starting to pay attention to like what might trigger that and make those adjustments that going into through my perimenopausal years will be a lot easier than someone who's like disengaged with how their body is.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's a completely different experience if I say to you, Tiffany, okay, Tiffany, you cannot drink alcohol. And you go out to dinner with your girlfriends or your partner, and you're like, Elizabeth's not here. She's not the boss of me. I'm going to have some bread
Don't
from that
tell
bread
her.
basket. Exactly.
Don't
And
tell
I'm
my
going to have
trainer I
some
ate
wine.
this.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm going to eat this. And then, like, you have a really shitty night's sleep. And then the next day, you're all groggy and you eat a bunch of crap the next day because, well, you had a bad night's sleep, right? And so your defense mechanisms are down for being able to be discerning with your food choices. And, then the next night you also have a bad night's sleep. And so it just becomes this cascading problem versus that's one experience if you just follow the diet. The other is, again, like you said, observing your own body and knowing ahead of time that if I have this glass of wine and if I have this roll or whatever, that I might have disrupted sleep tonight. And that's a choice that I'm willing to make. And if I do have disrupted sleep tonight, I know what to do the next day in order to get back on track and minimize the impact of those.
Yeah. Ah, so, so good. I love when women come on the show and share their wisdom and what they've experienced and what they know to be true. As we're wrapping up this episode, is there anything that was on your heart that's on your heart that we didn't get to, or any final thoughts you want to leave with the listener?
It's January and or close to the beginning of the year, and many people have New Year's resolutions. We usually dive headfirst into having to do all the things. And I just want to reinforce that you do not have to do all the things right now, that you can lean into it, that you can half ass your health. And just because you screwed up once does not mean that you can't start again next time, tomorrow, or even at the next meal. I love the idea of someone else gave me this concept of the 4 quarters system. So, sports ball, where you've probably had a team before where you've been watching football or whatever, and they go into the second half just down, right? They've had some hits in the second quarter, and in the third quarter they come back, and in the fourth quarter they win. And so like you can look at your day in that same like way, that if you have a bad quarter, you can still win the day. And so it doesn't have to be one of those things where you're like, well, I just got a speeding ticket, I'm going to break all of the traffic rules, right?
Might as well send me to jail now.
Exactly. So you can just do better the next few minutes. Yeah.
Ah, so good. How do people connect with you outside of the show?
Yeah, you can find me on my website at elizabethsherman.com. I'm also on Instagram at elizabeth.sherman.coach and on Facebook at Total Health by Eliz.
Oh, so good. Thank you so much for being on the show. Go connect with her. Go be a human in this world and actually connect with other humans who are doing big things and have been where you're going. Okay. And with that, that's two humans talking. I'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this episode as inspiring and actionable as I did. If you're ready to stop just surviving and start living a life where your health, your relationships, and your career work together without the burnout, then it's time that you join the Modern Women's Society. Inside, I'll walk you through my life GPS system, a proven blueprint to help you have it all while thriving. You'll gain tools, coaching, and the kind of clarity that brings big dreams to life without the stress, overwhelm, guilt, and shame that the modern woman is used to. We're going to create a life where you feel energized and excited to wake up every day and fulfilled when you put your head on the pillow. Click the link below to learn more and join countless other women who are redefining success on their terms. Because the life you've dreamed about is closer than you think. I'll see you on the inside.